Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Jupiter's CROCK here on the Outpost Unknown YouTube channel. My name is Matthew. Joining me tonight, as always, down there in Memphis is Ronan.
Nope, I survived. I outran the cold. I survived it.
Good. And our scribe, as you were, Spartacus, also known as Steve.
Yeah, look at us all being here on time on a Thursday night.
Yeah. Is that crazy?
Weird.
Never happens. So,
Except for those times when it did.
yeah, except those times when it did. Now, this is actually very exciting for us because tonight we are going to talk about the very first episode of Spartacus that we ever watched. This is Blood and Sand, right? This was the first season, and I think I looked up and it premiered in January of 2010, so we're just basically 13 years ago at this point in time. We were sitting down in front of our Xbox and watching this. So it's a blast from the past. I know we had some concerns going into this because our memories of the first few episodes of Blood and Sand are very, very poor. And we're going to discuss, was the episode as bad as we remembered it? Or did, having just come off of watching Gods of the Arena and the glory that was every episode of that, did it make this episode a little bit better? We'll discuss that. Spartacus, I like to turn this over to you. Is there anything you'd like to say before you start giving us the rundown of this first episode?
This was, when I watched this, this was only the second time I've ever seen this episode. I think this series that we're doing now is probably the fourth, possibly fifth time that I've gone through this series. But all the times in between, like after my first watch of this, anytime I want to revisit the series, I always start with episode 4 of Blood and Sand. So I have not seen this episode in probably 12, 13 years.
The Red Serpent is the title of this one.
Yep, the Red Serpent, which becomes a symbol that you see kind of referenced throughout the rest of the series from this point forward.
Now, I will point out to the listeners, I did watch the audio commentary for this first episode. I'm planning, as long as there's audio commentary on each episode, I'm planning to do that going forward, listening to that. So I will be throwing in tidbits of information gleaned from the creators of the show, the producers of the show, as we go through it. They had some interesting things to say about this very first episode, so I'll pepper those in throughout. So, Spartacus. Unless, Ronan, do you have anything that you want to add? This was your first introduction to Spartacus. How do you remember feeling about this first episode?
I don't recall, because it's been 13-ish years. I don't recall exactly my feelings the first time I ever watched it. As far as the episode proper, once Steve has given his his full plot synopsis rundown, we can talk about our current feelings on it. I will also mention that, as Matt said he listened to the commentary track, I have listened several times to the audiobook of the Spartacus War by, I believe his name is Barry Strauss. I believe that's his name. Basically the historical record of the actual Spartacus War. And so I do have some historical tidbits. Unfortunately, as far as what that book, history and the first season, it more or less all boils down to the fact that we don't, historically speaking, we don't exactly know all too many details about how Spartacus became a Roman slave. He probably fought as an auxiliary in the Roman army. Historically, there is no record to show that it was Glaber that he was fighting with. There's no record to show that they betrayed him. There's really nothing. It just said that he was a Thracian who fought in the auxiliary and found his way in slavery, and ended up being sold into a Roman ludus run by a guy named Claudius, not Claudius, run by a guy named Batius. And sometimes you respell that into Batiatus. And that's more or less it. As far as historically in this particular section of it, the person who came up with the whole depiction of the serpent around his head, some historical records show that was his wife. Other records show that was just some fortune teller who was in the ludus, who was saying the sort of stuff I foretold that there was a snake curled around his head, and that means great and dangerous things for him.
I
Uh,
love that there's just a fortune teller in the Ludus.
well, like again, that's just like historically, it's kind of up in the air as to where that particular part came from. It's not sure if it was his
Yeah.
wife, but his wife did survive well past. Like she was there in the Ludus with him, and like historically, it was like it went on that she was there well into the actual war. As opposed spoilers as opposed to what happens in the show. So that's all I got historically on this particular aspect of it, because there's not much historically about what happened to Ludus. He was there, and then after a few years, him and the other gladiators got out.
Well, Professor Ronan is here to drop the hot historical facts for us. So,
Yeah, I mean
Steve.
that captures all of the main highlights of this episode. So I feel like we can just
Yeah.
move on and skip this one.
No, we must suffer as Spartacus suffered. Or will we suffer? We'll discuss it. Ploticus, take it away.
So the show opens with a shot of a man that will come to be known as Spartacus, chained to a wall. He
I'm going
starts
to stop
having.
you right there with my first fact.
All right, well I quit. I get to get one sentence in. I'm out.
I just want to point out that this opening scene, apparently, according to audio commentary, there was a fight between the director and the producers over this opening scene. The producers wanted the show to start on Spartacus in the at the belly of the arena there, with the worry and concern on his face. The director was like, no, I want to start this out with the action. I want to be out there in the arena, and we start with a gladiator fight, and then we cut to Spartacus kind of watching this and seeing that. Ultimately they went with Spartacus in by himself down there. Do you guys agree with that?
Yep. I suppose so. Yeah, that kind of sets you up. They did a kind of like a half-see, I guess. Like you cut it on his face, and then you go right to the arena, and he's sitting there shaking. Yeah, it's like yeah. It's good. It's fine.
Ploticus, are you okay with that, or would you prefer just straight up action from the jump?
I don't care either way. I don't give a shit about Spartacus's origin story, so I would have preferred to them. I
Oh,
would have preferred them start the series with like the last 5 minutes of this episode.
okay. All right. Well, continue.
All right, so once again, let me repeat that one sentence that I got out of the way earlier. The show opens with a shot of the man who will soon become Spartacus chained to a wall. He is not Spartacus yet. In fact, we never actually find out his name throughout the entire series. And when someone calls him Spartacus early on, he just repeats, that's not my name. That's not what my wife knows me as, etc., etc. Anyways, we get one shot of him chained to a wall in the arena, and he watches another guy that's apparently his buddy in a gladiator fight. So then we flash back to how Spartacus actually got there. And some undetermined period before, Spartacus's people, who are the Thracians, I guess, they are having a chat with Glaber, who's going to become like the main villain of the first 2 seasons proper of the show. And they strike a deal. Like they have not been, the Thracians and the Romans have not been on friendly terms before, but now the Romans need them, and so the deal is the Romans will help the Thracians fight. I think the Getae is the name of the main Thracian enemy, and in return, Spartacus and his people will help Glaber and Rome fight the Roman bad guy, the people that are trying to attack Rome. And so they agree to these terms, and Spartacus is a very honorable man. So he's like, all right, I have my word, and he sticks to his word throughout this episode. He goes to meet his wife, who tells him that I had a vision that terrible things are going to happen to you in front of like a great red serpent. And Spartacus says, well, the animal spirit of the Getae is the wolf, not the snake. So you got nothing to worry about. You're just having crazy dreams. Uh, so then Spartacus and his people go to fight the Getae, and the Romans they don't show up until the fight is almost over. In fact, like the Spartacus and his people are worried that they're not going to show up at all. But eventually, the Romans do show up, and they continue to treat Spartacus and his people like shit. It's very clear early on that Glaber is just going to to treat these people like fodder, like cannon fodder, or whatever the Roman equivalent of cannon fodder was at this point in time.
Quick question for you, Steve. Do you have the Blu-ray version? Is that what you watch this on?
No, I have some old DVDs.
Okay, is your DVD version, is it the extended version of this scene? Like, did it literally say extended version?
I don't think so.
Okay, because I don't know if Ronan saw it. My Blu-ray said extended version.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I did.
So, according to audio commentary, there are scenes at the beginning here. The scene with Sura at the beginning and Glaber talking to all the Thracians, that sort of big sequence when they're trying to... Were those scenes in the version that you watched?
I mean, like what scenes of Glaber and them talking? 'Cause
There's a scene like Glaber and like all the Thracians in like a big tent, and they're arguing back and forth about whether or not, why should we really fight for Rome? Should we not fight for Rome?
is that the scene where Spartacus has to repeat the question to what end repeatedly? Because
Yeah, that's the
yes,
scene.
then
Yeah.
if yes, then that was in my version. So yeah.
Okay, so you must have also seen the extended version. Just making sure.
What I mean, what the fuck? How could that scene even be cut if we were supposed to know the history of Spartacus?
The audio commentary said the original airing of this, none of that was in there, and that was part of the reason that the creators thought the episode sucked so bad, because the studio stars, whoever made them, chop a whole bunch of stuff out of it. So they didn't like the original airing, and so later on they went in for the Blu-rays and I assume DVDs and added all of that context in that wasn't there before.
Oh well, I've only watched these DVDs, so I thought that was there from the beginning. I had no idea that even that little bit of context was missing from the aired version. But nope, that was there. Anyways, but prior to Spartacus leaving to go fight, which his wife Sura doesn't want him to do, they have a moment where he ties like a purple like ribbon around her leg, and she tells them, go kill everyone.
Keep me close to your thighs at all times.
Yeah, the thought will keep us both warm.
Spot on.
So back after this first battle that you see, Spartacus and his men are being treated like shit. They get like the scraps that the Roman soldiers don't eat, and Spartacus ends up getting to a fight with a guy I think named Drinus. I keep wanting to call him Dennis, but no, there's an R in there somewhere. So
I didn't even know they gave his name.
I didn't know either. It might be because since my hearing sucks, I watch everything with subtitles, and they labeled him as Drinus. That might be the only reason I know it. He might only be named in the subtitles on this show. Anyways, Spartacus and Drinus they don't get along at first, because Drinus is like, fuck the Romans, they're not helping us, let's just go back to our people. And Spartacus says, no, I gave my word. They get into a fight, but they ended up having this kind of grudging respect. And Glaber tells them, you two go scout what the Gedai are doing. Glaber goes back to his tent where his wife Alithia is there, and it should be illegal. It should be illegal for any one person to be this attractive, because goddamn.
Now I have some funny facts about this particular scene. So the audio commentary is filled with dudes, right? It's like Rob Tappert, who I think is actually married to Lucy Lawless in real life.
Yeah, he is.
And it's like the director. It's Stephen DeKnight. It's like all these dudes, and they talk about this scene, and they basically say like, hey, well, all the women knew going in that they're going to have to get naked in this, and Viva Bianca, who plays Alithia, was just like, she's the first one up, right? So she's got to go through this. And they mentioned that a couple of interesting things. Number one, she was supposed to be a very minor character in this series. Stephen Knight said she was going to barely be in it at all. She was just kind of there as a little bit of eye candy for Glaber.
I cannot imagine this show without her.
Yeah, then they saw her and how awesome she was, and how like evil and manipulative she was in the role, and they expanded it quite a bit. Like,
they saw her and then they expanded the role. Yeah.
Speaking of seeing her, so when we were introduced to Alithia, of course, she drops her, I guess, a fur robe or whatever. She's wearing nothing on underneath.
We're getting to the merkin?
Yes, the merkin. So they go into detail about this merkin that she's wearing, and they say that the executives at Stars, I don't know if they didn't describe it as like an argument back and forth, but it was like literal meetings were taking place as to whether or not the women needed to have a merkin on during these sequences. And of course, Viva Bianca was completely shaved down there. And according to at least Stephen
Such is
DeKnight,
best in life.
according to Stephen DeKnight, he did his research, and they actually had Roman historians that worked on this, and they were like, well, no, the Roman women would not have had pubic hair because they viewed body hair as like akin to barbarians, so they would shave it all off. So even if you'd go to like a brothel or something like that, the prostitutes in the brothel would be completely shaved because they just did not like body hair. That's why they don't have beards and stuff. The Romans just did not like that stuff. And the executives said, no, that's too much. We're going with a merkin. Therefore, Viva wears a merkin. The more you know.
Okay, great. Glad we went down that rabbit hole. Anyways, Glaber and Alithia are talking about their life together, and Alithia's father is apparently like a very famous, like powerful Roman person.
Senator.
And senator, sure. And then Glaber was sent out on this mission, basically specifically to win a lot of battles and get a lot of glory and win the praise of Lithia's dad, and that's not happening because there's apparently another Roman war general out there who's kind of beating Glaber to the punch. But Spartacus and Drenus, who may or may not have a name in the actual show, they get back from their scouting and they see that, hey, the Getae are heading west towards our Thracian villages. And Glaber kind of shoos them off, but Alithia tells him that, hey, the big enemy of Rome, which, Matt, I'm sure you know this person's name. Who's the big enemy of Rome? I forgot the guy's name. It's like Mithra something.
Oh, Mithridates.
All right, Mithridates. Right. Mithridates, who is like the main target that Glaber wants, is to the east. To the west, or to basically opposite directions. The Thracian enemies are in one direction, and the enemies of Rome are in the other. And so Alithia basically tells him, fuck the Thracians, go get your man. And, so Glaber gives those orders, and the Thracians are very upset because they're like, hey, Romans, what the hell? We had a deal. And Glaber basically says, you aligned yourself with Rome, so you will do what Rome tells you to do. We are going away from your villages to fight Mithridates. And or Mithridates or whatever his name is, and at this
Greeks,
point,
essentially the Greeks, I believe.
Greeks, sure. At that point, Spartacus and his warriors rebel and fight and kill many Romans, but Spartacus stupidly leaves Glaber alive.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so this is also was a very big debate amongst the creators of the show. So there's a moment during the sequence here where Spartacus goes to sort of grab Glaber's horse, and the horse kind of rears up, and Glaber falls off. So there was debate between the producers and the director of how did you see that playing out? Did you see that playing out as Spartacus intentionally did that to knock him off his horse, or that Spartacus accidentally got him knocked off his horse?
I saw it as accidental because I seem to recall like Spartacus making kind of like a weird face because he grabs like the reins of the horse, and like the horse just jerks back so much it breaks like the rein or whatever it's called. So no, I feel like, I mean, Spartacus couldn't have known that this, I don't know, part of the horse's harness was going to snap when he reached up. So I feel like this was accidental.
Yeah, his face clearly shows shock. I don't know if Matt's about to drop some sort of nope, it was all intentional, but like if so, like I gotta knock Andy Whitfield on this. He did not act as though this was an intentional deed. His face and everything showed, oh fuck, very clearly written on his face.
Yeah, so basically they went with it's not Spartacus's fault. But the debate was, should we set up Spartacus? No, Spartacus intentionally does this. Like, would that change the character of Spartacus at all if he intentionally knocked Glaber off the horse and started the thing? But they wanted him to look sort of sympathetic and make it be like, well, man, all this bad shit is happening to him because he just accidentally did this. He's not really a bad dude towards the Roman guy. He wasn't trying to start any of this.
Yeah, if they had it to where he did it on purpose, then it would make even less sense that he lets Glaber live here.
Yeah. Yeah. Bad move, Spartacus. You should have
Yes.
taken that dude out.
You should have taken that dude out, but I mean, if he purposely picked the fight, then you extra should have taken that dude out.
Yeah.
Anyways, Spartacus and his people say, fuck the Romans, we're out. They go back to the village where Spartacus rescues his wife, but everyone else, like the village is done for. Spartacus and his wife make plans to travel south to meet up with, I guess, other people that Spartacus knows about. But they wake up the next morning and Glaber is there. He captures them both. He tells Spartacus that I'm selling your wife into slavery. Spartacus tries to say, just let me, this is my fault. Do whatever you want to me, but leave my wife alone. But Glaber's not having it. You find out that Glaber has been recalled to Rome much earlier than he was supposed to be. So he's kind of like going back in disgrace, essentially. You also find out that because of Spartacus's little uprising, that a bunch of Glaber's men deserted. So Glaber is not having a good day. He fully intends to punish both Spartacus and his wife for this. So they all head back to Rome. There's a cut to like a ship. They're like riding in like kind of the underbelly of a ship heading to Rome, and you find out that Spartacus has been unconscious for 3 days. So how he didn't die from crazy brain damage is anyone's guess at this point.
Before you head off, just another quick interesting fact. That sequence when he shows up to find Sura, who apparently is like picking fruit off a tree in the middle of winter, which seems a little strange to me.
I mean, it was frosted. They did some work.
Yeah, they shot that whole sequence in 20 minutes because they ran out of time. So the director's like, I had 20 minutes to shoot this entire fight sequence, which looking back on it now is like, well, that's pretty impressive. We've spent entire days trying to film fight sequences in our movies, and they turn out like shit. So 20 minutes, it looked pretty good. And one thing
what a difference a budget makes.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing I wanted to mention was we'll talk about it more, but the look of this very first episode, it is very CG heavy. And the creators said everything, just about every single thing, except for some interiors, was shot on a green screen. They're like, the only thing that was real was the dirt that they were standing on.
And I'm fine with that, except for like the sequences early on where it shows Spartacus like after he joins the Romans
running in place.
He obviously he's like miming that he's running, and then the green screen behind him shows him basically phasing through time and space from battle to battle. It's very distracting how bad like the early CGI is.
It looks super fucking rough when he was like while I was watching that scene. It's like, oh god damn, because at certain points like the Blu-ray probably doesn't help all the clarity, but you can see just that kind of like heavy distortion. He is clearly not the right tint, and nothing looks right.
The running in place is very.
They couldn't even get him a fucking treadmill.
I mean, I guess they'd have had to have like painted the treadmill green to get it blocked up. It's very, very bad, very distracting, and I feel like the effects improve significantly after the first couple episodes here.
Well, they also mentioned the fact that part of the reason why they shot it like that is because they were trying to go sort of expressionistic with it. They weren't trying to sort of make it look realistic. Like, when they're in the arena and someone gets stabbed and there's just a zillion gallons of CG blood that spew out behind them and stuff like that. Even the filmmakers were like, yeah, probably not the right way that we should have gone, but their intent at least was just to make it kind of over the top and not specifically realistic, but it looks bad.
It does. Anyways, Spartacus is on a boat. He's heading for Rome. We see Glaber get back to Ilithia, and Ilithia is kind of worried on Glaber's behalf, because now Glaber has to answer to Alithia's dad, and Daddy is not going to be happy about Glaber's failures out on the battlefield. But there's gonna be games. It's it's Spartacus, it's the arena. Like there's always gonna be games. And so we finally get our first look at Bodiatus, and Bodiatus brings out Barca and Crixus. And then it's good Salonius, only he's not good anymore. And not good Salonius brings out like 6 or 7 dudes. And so Bodiatus is like, he's muttering to himself but also to Xena. It's like, this bullshit. I only get to have 2 people out here, but Salonius gets to have 6. Then Glaber comes out, and Glaber's move to try to save face is to he captured Spartacus and 5 other Thracians, and I guess this is going to be like the first time that Thracians have ever been in the arena, and so Glaber's hoping that like this will be a spectacle that kind of gets him back into everyone's good graces. And there's this good scene, or a great scene, where when Glaber and Alithia first meet up after Glaber gets back, they're talking about, okay, how can we fix this? How can we keep you looking good in the eyes of Alithia's dad? And Alithia says, "Oh, it's fine. All I have to do is make teary eyes, and Daddy will do what I want." And then later on in the scene where these Thracian slaves are being presented, Alithia goes to her dad and is like, "See, look, everyone loves Glaber." And her dad's immediately like, "If you come to me asking for his favor one more time, I will not fucking listen to you again." Like, immediately, that's out the fucking window. Like, you just immediately get shut down. But they are to be these.
If Alithia came batting her eyes at me, though, I'd probably just do whatever she wanted.
Yeah, and most people would, and they would be correct to do so. But anyway, it cuts to the games, and the Thracian slaves are going to be executed ad gladiatorium. Like, what's the phrasing there? Basically, it means death by a gladiator.
Yeah.
So then we're pretty much caught up to where the show begins. Drinus is out there fighting. He gets defeated by this main gladiator that Spartacus is going to fight. So Drinus is dead. He's dead. You also see shots of all of the other Thracian. I don't know. They're not slaves yet, but the Thracian victims. Like,
they might as well be.
Spartacus is the only one left. And Glaber is up in the Pulvinus with Alithia's dad, Bodiatus, Xena, Salonius. And so Glaber says, I specifically saved this guy for last. This is the guy that fucked us over. He is the reason that, I had to come back basically disgraced. So let's fucking get him. And so Spartacus goes out to fight this one gladiator that just killed Drinus. But then Glaber brings out 3 other gladiators, and these are 4 of Salonius's men. And the crowd does not like this. They're like, they're all about seeing a captured, disgraced Thracian person get killed, but they want it to actually be like a little bit of a contest, so they do
fair
not
fight, right?
Yeah,
you don't want like a heavyweight going up against a lightweight sort of thing.
They are not about this 4-on-1 fight that they're about to see.
Yeah, it's like, this guy's a fucking dog. He's less than human. Let's kill this fucker. But hey, let's be civil about this. I mean, give him some dignity.
Well, I think the main thing with the gladiatorial games is that the crowd likes to see not only a fair fight, but they want to see action and excitement. And if it's 4-on-1, it's like it's going to be a beatdown. Like, there's no entertainment there, right? They want to be able to see
squash match.
Yeah.
So, anyways, and just like we just said, Spartacus is getting wrecked. And also the main gladiator that Spartacus is fighting has a shield with a big red serpent painted on it, and Spartacus sees this and he kind of like realizes that yo shit, my wife wasn't hallucinating. Maybe she actually can tell the future.
Well, what did she say before he left her? Like, the big thing of the series.
Kill them all.
Kill them all, right? And that's what jogs. He's like, I'm just gonna murder all these fuckers.
Yeah. And so Spartacus gets up and proceeds to, out of nowhere,
go full Gannicus.
Spartacus starts to Hulk up.
Yeah. Spartacus kills these 4 gladiators. Glaber is pissed off, but the crowd is thrilled by this, and so like they can't kill him. Like Spartacus won over the crowd, and like where the crowd goes, that's where the powerful people are going, and so uh, Glaber has to begrudgingly allow Spartacus to live, but Batiatus offers up something that he hopes is going to buy favor with Glaber. He tells Glaber, "Hey, let me buy this person from you. I'll put him in my ludus and train him as a gladiator, but he's probably gonna die because he doesn't have what it takes. Spoilers, he has what it takes. Um, but then they decide, okay, so everybody agrees to this deal. Glaber is of course not happy about it. But then they talk about, what is this person's name? And Glaber says, I never asked his name because I didn't give a shit. And then Batiatus starts talking about, oh, hey, remember the story of this old Thracian king that was a badass? His name was Spartacus, and so they dubbed this man Spartacus, and that's the end of the episode.
Yeah, few fun facts I'll throw in here before we start discussing our new feelings of this episode, or maybe they stayed the same. DJ would like this. This was shot on a Phantom camera. So basically, a Phantom camera is a camera that shoots like 1,000,000 frames a second. I'm exaggerating, but that's how you get all the 300 slow motion-esque sort of stuff. And the Phantom camera would break constantly. That's one of the reasons why they shot that. That scene with Sura and Spartacus in 20 minutes, that fight. The Starz executives hated the look of the barbarians, the Getae or whatever. They thought they looked like too fantasy-esque, like they should be in a J.R.R. Tolkien story, because they wear like these weird like skull masks and stuff.
Yeah,
they look very different
they look
from
very inhuman, which
yeah.
No one else in the show really has that look.
Yeah. There's a sequence early on when Spartacus, it's a slow motion, Spartacus like throws a sword. It's one of the early fights when he still is a Thracian, throws a sword and goes like in slow motion right towards the camera. That was actually practical. That was not CG. Andy Whitfield just amazingly hit the mark with by throwing that sword, which is cool. So
he throws his sword a lot in this. I feel like it happens 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, they set that up
every time.
Yeah, they set that, well, not every time. They set that up to be like his calling card. So I think in the second episode, it doesn't work. That's how you know, oh shit, he's in trouble.
Oh shit, it landed hilt first.
So let's talk a little bit about the orgy scene, because Steve kind of glossed right over this orgy scene. There is a nice, big, long orgy scene in the middle of this. And normally the Starz executives who are they're like cut down the sex and violence for whatever reason. They love the orgy scene and they wanted more of it.
I legitimately don't remember the orgy scene. What's the
How
orgy
do you
scene?
not remember the midget with the mouse mask that had a fucking dildo on the top of it?
Okay, so I saw that, but I didn't see that as an orgy. I thought it was more like the equivalent of like a strip club, because I used to remember like there being naked girls like rolling around in this pit of like glittery water.
Okay, it's probably not a full-on orgy, because I don't remember.
Yeah, get the terminology right, Matt. This was like orgy light.
Orgy light. Okay. So this took them the entire day to film. There are a bunch of naked girls holding fish in the backgrounds of the shots. If you look closely, they're all holding these big giant fish, and they gave them real fish. And those real fish began to rot throughout the course of the day and stunk up the entire proceedings. And
that's a mistake to give them fish.
He gave him real fish. The guy who points his sword at Spartacus, Spartacus is like, all the slaves are kind of like on their knees. And Spartacus looks over and there's a dude who's a gladiator, and he like points his sword directly at Spartacus. That's the actual gladiator that is in the next scene. So that's
the one that Spartacus is fighting.
Yes, that one, and the one that killed the guy right before.
I thought that was implied. I didn't know that was like a secret behind the scenes thing.
Well, I didn't even realize that when I was watching it. It just went past my head. And the filmmakers said that they also hated that because they didn't make it clear, and lots of people didn't catch that.
Hey, Spartacus filmmakers, I got it.
There you go. And the only other thing I'll mention here is the original ending. So this ending of this episode sort of is the camera sort of zooming in, pushing in on Spartacus as he's all bloody and and whatnot. That was not the original ending. The original ending, they were supposed to have Andy Whitfield sort of pass out, and then a bunch of people from the arena, whether it was the onlookers or just other people who were other gladiators who were around, or whoever caretakes the gladiators before, they were going to like lift him up and carry him out in like this very Christ-like moment.
Oh, that sounds
Um,
stupid.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that was a bad idea.
And so the director on the day of, they were so far behind schedule that he called Rob Tapper, and he's like, "Yeah, this thing in the script, I can't do it. We have no more time. So how about I just do this?" And then the producers all agreed that when they saw it, it worked way better
Compromise.
than what the other original thing was. So those are my sort of fun facts that I gleaned from the audio commentary of this first episode.
Salonius continues to hit on Xena. I think that's the only thing
Yes.
that becomes relevant that we didn't really talk about.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
forgot
well,
about that.
He's got like, you know, like in Gods of the Arena, you have like, you know, spineless good Salonius, and now you have confident good Salonius, where
He
now
still
he's just like,
sucks at training gladiators, apparently,
yeah,
but he's
this is true.
confident.
This is true, yes, but you know, now he's confident. Now he's like, yeah, I'm in a hurry to fuck your bitch, like, you know, good Salonius. Not
Wow.
I have a question. Like, so it seems to be like accepted that this is 5 years after Gods of the Arena.
Uh-huh.
Is there how do we know that? Is there anything either in this or in Gods of the Arena that sets that up, or is that just someone involved with the production says that this is the way it is, and so that's the
That's
way
what
it is?
that's what the producers say.
yeah, I don't think there's any time thing.
Yeah.
That's a knock for this whole show, like particularly like the first season, is like the span of time is really a shitty job telling how long events are it's going on between events. Like I have
Yeah.
no clue how long like this whole show takes. Like
I have
the
no idea
Spart
how long Spartacus was actually fighting with the Romans. Like, we only saw one battle. Was that the next day? Was that 2 months after the opening scene? I have
Well,
no idea.
Yeah, exactly.
historically, it was about 3 years. Like Spartacus was on the run, sacking
Well,
or Italy for
well,
like 3
that was the
years.
Spartacus War. Steve and I were referring to like the opening
The
shots where
opening,
he's
like when
in.
he's working
Oh,
with
gotcha,
Flather.
Yeah,
Like,
gotcha.
how long was he allied to Rome in these opening scenes?
yeah.
Like, yeah,
How
Yeah.
long was
no
he
idea.
in the ludus? You know, that kind of thing. It's like the show really does a bad job of explaining the flow of time.
Yeah, agreed, agreed. So, we were all a little concerned about watching this first episode. Ronan, we'll start with you because I think we kind of already know what Steve's feelings will be. But Ronan, how did you feel rewatching this first episode after we watched Gods of the Arena?
There wasn't a lot of plot to get in the way of that episode. Uh, the thing, like the thing that I remember most about the first few episodes of the show isn't so much that, oh, they're so bad, they're awful, they're terrible. Is just like I do recall them having this very bizarre kind of art. Like we went through the whole prequel show. The prequel show does not have this style. By this point, they had
Right.
determined the way they were going to shoot the show, and it didn't look like this because you know they'd already finished up. You know, like Spartacus or whatever.
Well,
But yeah,
yeah.
these first few episodes, like they've got that weird kind of like CGI. They've got the really shitty blue screen that they didn't quite finish it up, or you know, all like the slow motion, dramatic blood splattering stuff. They keep that to a certain extent, but like these first couple episodes really crank that up before they
Leans
eventually
heavy into it, real heavy.
before they decide to tone it down. Outside of that, that's the most jarring thing is like I know that the rest of the series will not maintain this look. And I think I mentioned when we were talking about Gods of the like Gods of the Arena that that's not too uncommon. Like you go back and you watch the early episodes, pretty much any TV show, and they're always different than what it looks like, you know, a season or so later. Like they always change as they get their footing. So that's not super. That's not like the most crazy thing to think of. The show, the first few episodes, be very different, but it's like, man, it's really fucking different.
Aside from that was one other thing I will mention. It's just kind of funny tidbit from the audio commentary. I think it was Rob Tappert said that they called him in and like, okay, we're going to show you the first sort of like previs build of this. We shot this on the green screen. We put some placeholder effects and stuff on it. He didn't really realize it was, I guess it was sort of placeholder effects. And he said when he watched it, he's like, we're fucked. Like it looked so bad that he was like, oh my God, we're we are sunk. There's no way. But then they added like all the CG snow effects and the embers and stuff like that. I To your point, Ronan, I think we can all agree that the visual look, at least of these first few episodes, is pretty rough. I think we're going to all be on the same page. It doesn't look very good. In terms of like the episode itself, like set that aside, would you say that this episode is a distinct lesser quality than all? Because normally we say, well, all the Spartacus episodes are good to great, right? That's what we said for God's Arena. Is this appreciably worse than anything else that we will come to see, aside from maybe the next two episodes going forward? Or would you say, it's not that bad, it's still good? How do you feel now about watching this one?
Compared to Gods of the Arena, yeah, this one is arguably, not as good. All of those episodes were like solid bangers. There wasn't like a single, I guess this episode's okay, which, that like really for the, as far as like first episodes go for this show, like that's, I'm not going to say it sucks. It's okay, but it's definitely not great, especially when you compare it to the prequel show. Now, the prequel show had the hindsight, had the benefit of coming after this, where they had already worked out all the kinks and all the, we don't need to do all this. So the prequel show gets a strong advantage by, coming after once they learned the lessons from this first season. But yeah, it's of all the episodes of Spartacus we've watched, this is definitely the worst one to this point.
Okay, Steve, let it all out.
Yeah, I gotta agree. I don't care about any of this. I think like when I first decided I was gonna watch this, I was like, okay, Spartacus. I remember Matt even like because I watched this on DVDs like a little bit later on after the series had premiered, and Matt was like, hey, just I think Matt may have like poisoned the well by telling me that the first couple episodes are rough. But I remember watching it. I remember going into it thinking like, okay, Spartacus, gladiator fights, the arena. There's going to be a rebellion, and I watched this and I'm like, who the fuck are the Gedi? Why do I care about what the Roman army is doing at this point in time? I want to get to the arena, and so for a long time I felt like I don't care about Spartacus's backstory. I feel like if they wanted to have all of this in there, sprinkle a couple of 5-minute flashbacks throughout the first episodes, but like get to the parts that we all know Spartacus for. But I've always wondered like if they had done a good job, would that make me care? And I don't know the answer to that. But yeah, this episode didn't do it for me. There's a reason that anytime I go back to this series, I start on episode 4.
Okay. I will largely agree with you guys. I will say that rewatching this, it wasn't as bad as I remembered it being. And maybe that is because, God's in Ring, I kind of knew what to expect. I'm like, all right, this is going to be a little bit step down in quality, but I found myself just sort of trying to take in the setup of it all. Like I said, I love, the dialogue between, Alithia and Glaber and the dad and all of that stuff. It's got the building blocks of what makes the show great just a few episodes down the road.
Everything from the point where Glaber returns to Rome is good. It's all of the stuff where Spartacus is a part of the army and hanging out with his wife that is just completely unnecessary, or it should have been done like faster and like sprinkle it out through the season. We did not need a dedicated like essentially prequel episode to what everyone knows Spartacus for.
Yeah, I'd be curious what you would think if they cut a lot of those scenes out. Like if you had watched the original aired version instead of the extended version, if it would have helped at all, because like, okay, yeah, I don't have all these extended scenes with Spartacus and Sura and Spartacus talking to all these people and all that.
I didn't know that there was a version without that.
Yeah,
it's been so long since I watched the original airing episode, and I also remember for a while I would just watch it on like Netflix streaming. But it's been so long, I always remember it having that opening conversation. I mean,
yeah.
Clearly you're saying that they were saying it didn't, so it didn't. But I swear it's always been there.
Maybe there was like a portion of it that was there, and for the Blu-ray, it's just an extended version of that or something. I mean, I don't know. Or I'm just going off what the audio commentary says, because honestly, I don't remember 13 years ago what every scene was in the episode. But whether it was there, whether it was not there, who knows? I agree with you guys. This one is pretty rough, but I will say, Andy Whitfield's awesome. Like, you can tell he's going to be an awesome Spartacus from the beginning. He's going to be a character that we can get behind, that we support. I suspect that the reason why they decided to do this extended backstory of Spartacus is so that, you know, the viewers can understand like why we need to follow this guy, like why he's an actual good person. We want to feel bad for him when he gets enslaved and has to go through all this stuff. And so I think that's probably the reason why they did it. But I mean, even the filmmakers themselves are kind of like, this one wasn't the best. You know, we didn't get off with like, you know, off on our best foot here, but it gets better. Now, I don't really remember a whole lot about episodes 2 and 3, honestly. So I'm curious to see if they will get a little bit better in my mind, or if they're still going to be kind of like, yeah, I don't need to see any of this stuff. But yeah, I mean, that's our discussion of the first episode here, the Red Serpent. Is there anything else that either of you guys would like to toss out there that we haven't covered?
No.
Yeah, I'm good. I think we touched on all the bases.
Okay. Do you think it was weird? One last thing I'll mention. I did think it was weird, just coming off Gods of the Arena and how Batiatas acts in that series to how he sort of is portrayed and acts in this first episode. He's not as sort of like exaggerated and whatnot. You can tell that they were shot in completely different times, and his character had been very, very different at that. I did notice that, but it didn't bother me. Xena, Lucretia, she doesn't have a whole lot to do in this, but we'll get there. So that's it. That's all we got. So stay tuned. Next Thursday, we will be back for the next episode, which is called Sacramentum Gladiatorum. And so Spartacus will get to the ludus, and we will find out what the hell is going on with all the drama that's about to take place in the House of Batiatas. So thanks, everybody. Leave a comment. Tell us what you think. Are we completely off base? And we'll catch you next week.